In today's video we're looking at finding percentage parts. So we'll be looking at two methods, the chunking method and the MD multiply and divide method. For chunking we'll be finding 10%, then 1%, and then how to use those to find other percentages. For the multiply and divide method we'll be using the method to find any percentage. For the chunking method for 10%, all you need to do is divide your number by 10. It's because there are 10 tens in 100 and percentages are out of 100. So to find 10%, you just divide by 10. So if we find 10% of 250, we divide 250 by 10 to give 25. So we now know that 25 is 10% of 250. For your dividing, I'd recommend you try and do it in your head if you can, particularly with the easier numbers like 10% and 1%. If you are finding it difficult, use pen and paper or use a calculator if you're really struggling. So here's a chance for you to try it out and find 10% of the following amounts. Do pause your video while you work them out and then I'll show you the answers afterwards. So here are your questions. Now's the thinking time, so do pause the video at this point. Okay, that's the end of the thinking time, so let's check the answers. You should have 4, 1.2, 26 and 0.36. Now we'll look at finding 1%. To find 1% of a number, you divide it by 100, because there are 100 ones making up 100%. So in our example, 1% of 670, we divide 670 by 100, and that gives us 6.7. So we know that 6.7 is 1% of 670. So you have a go now at finding 1% of the following amounts. Again, do pause the video and then I'll show you the answers. So here are your numbers. Now's the thinking time, so pause at this point. Okay, thinking time over. Here are the answers. 6, 7.43, 0.43, 0.085. And you can use those techniques to make any percentage you want by combining the different elements. There are some other advanced techniques you can use, such as finding 5% by dividing 10%, the answer to 10%, in half, and other things you can look up if you wish to. So here's the method for finding 40% of 85. Step 1 would be to find 10%. Step 2 is that you need 4 of those, 4 10% to make 40, so you'll need 4 lots of that answer. So 10% of 85 would be 8.5. We need 4 of those put together to make the whole answer. So 4 8.5s are 34. Rather than adding, you could choose to multiply 8.5 by 4, and of course that would give you 34 as well. You don't have to write the numbers out as I've done, but it's just one way to avoid making a mistake by trying to rush and missing a step out. In our second example, 22% of 60, we'd first find 10%, then we'd find 1%, then we'd put those answers together to make the number we want. 10% of 60 is 6, 1% of 60 is 0.6, so we'll put together 10%, 10%, 1% and 1%, and that will make, of course, 22%. So we add all the answers up, 6 and 6, 0.6 and 0.6, and that will give us 13.2. So 22% of 60 is 13.2. Have a go at these questions using that chunking method. Again, here's the thinking time, so do pause the video. Thinking time over, let's look at the answers. 21, 13.65, 160. Now there are pros and cons to using the chunking method. One of the advantages is that 10% can usually be done in your head by moving the decimal point, so it's something you can do easily when you're out and about shopping. You can also use the method to estimate an answer. If you don't have a calculator and you're trying to do something a bit more difficult, like 19%, estimate what 20% would be, and you'll have a good idea of what the answer should look like. The disadvantages are that it's easy to miss out a step or try and combine all the parts together wrongly and come up with the wrong answer. It can also be quite a long method compared to some others you could use. So let's have a look now at the next method, the multiply and divide method. This one's much quicker if you're using a calculator, and people find it easier to remember because there are just 2 steps. So step 1 is multiply your starting number by the percentage. Step 2 is dividing by 100 because percentages are out of 100. It actually doesn't matter which order you multiply and divide in. So I'm going to show you 4 different ways, but you just choose the one that suits you. So 12% of 30, we multiply the 2 numbers together, 12 times 30, which gives us 360. We then divide that number by 100, 360 divided by 100 is 3.6. So 3.6 is 12% of 30. If you want to see that in a different way, we'll divide first. 12% means 12 out of 100. So 12 divided by 100 is 0.12. Multiply that by the 30, of course, gives us 3.6. If you want to, you can divide the 30 by 100 first to give 0.3, and then multiply that answer by 12, also giving 3.6. You may sometimes see the method represented as a fraction, so 12 over 100 times 30. Same thing again, just divide by 100, multiply by 30. It's the same answer. So out of those, just choose the one that you thought was easiest to remember. You can, of course, use different ones. It depends what combination of numbers you have. So your final questions to try. Have a bit of thinking time. Do pause the video at this point. Okay, that's the thinking time over. Here are the answers. 10.2, 38.4, 15 and 4. So that's it for the 2 methods. I hope you found one that suits you. Try them out with some further questions if you like. You can easily make up questions of your own, or you could look for another method if you didn't really like either of those. So good luck with finding your percentages.